Um, okay, just let's show ourselves. Good.
Yeah.
I'll
Thank you,
start with
Daniele.
the video. Do you see my screen, right?
Yes, right. Everything
Okay,
is
I
perfect.
proceed. So, as my previous colleagues were talking about, this is a large effort through Europe with different partners, as you see here. Clearly, from a user-centric point of view, a core question is about the users. Who's going to be the users of these next generation e-mobility services? So from a design point of view, we know that we've seen the developmental phases, um, the developmental phases of the cars, the e-bikes themselves, from the technical point of view. Then from the municipalities, we see a portion of sections from Venaria Reale, actually, on imagining the layout of the routes, the paths, where the cars will just move around. And then we know engineers within the project are just making the best effort to design the infrastructures needed and necessary, definitely necessary to have these new e-mobility services, e-bikes, electrified quadricycles, and e-bikes with charging stations through the city. Uh, Even more clearly, within the internal of the driving seat, you have access to a full reach range of functionalities that will be very advanced to put you not just within a car that is the next generation green mobility, but giving you access to a new kind of service, the service of co-sharing, sharing a train ticket, and using the municipality might be just discounting training tickets if you're gonna use this electrified car, and this is the kind of functionalities called under the name of co-mobility, using different means of transport on the same commuting trip. And Steve, this car is one of the part. But the question here remains on the fact that we need, look at my pointer, the user profiles. We need to understand what our user need and wants, because it's not just necessary the engineering side of creating the architecture, but we need, see, the target users. What are their needs and wishes and interests and attitudes? From a psychological point, basic psychological, social psychological point of view, we need to get an idea of our end users within the project. So we started surveying them on a mass scale, on a large scale through Europe. This is an innovation in itself. It's not just the classic single city or single country vision on from a marketing point of view most of the time on the users, the preferences. This was just sampling through at least portion of Europe to get the propensity to use, the next propensity to use this kind of systems. Via the acceptance of gathering, surveying user, we can then inform decision making about policy on municipality business models for mobility services. So user profiles and methods. During the developmental phases of the technical infrastructure, from the bikes, the cars, and the envisaged infrastructures, there were partners within the project, surveying for market analysis and revising what we know already until now, 2020, about what is the kind of perception of the public opinion about the market and even the vendors or the developers. So market mining. Then we have, very important to this presentation, the Steve survey. At the beginning of this project, everybody was clear. We were not just selling cars, new type of electrified cars, but we were selling a service. So we needed user vision. So we were starting profiling next generation users in advance of what's going to happen in the next 10 years at least. And even designing a forum where we can just harvest, gather, pick up knowledge, because people are disseminating and distributing opinions about these new services. So we created a dedicated forum, and I know in Village, for instance, that will be part of our strategy to populate it even more interestingly and to listen to the next generation users. So a full user-centric vision. So the target population section within this project was residents, commuters, business travelers, and leisure travelers or tourists. So we were not just saying in general the users. We were just targeting at least a number of users useful for municipalities, for instance, for cities and suburban areas to take into account. And we will see why. The nation were Italy, Spain, Austria. There are others, obviously, but the key central areas for experimentation were in Italy, Venaria, as we said, Torino, Spain, in Calvia, and Austria Village. That was the other center, the present center. So the survey, to be simple, let's call it even the kind of very sophisticated questionnaire, reached out more than 4,000 total participants. This is quite a number. Even from a statistician like me, having sampling and subsampling from this large number, it's not big data, but we're aiming towards that. It's just showing that we can cross-generalize the results, at least through portions of the European citizen kind of next generation users of e-mobility services. So for instance, Torino had more than 1,600 valid responses for this project. Projects and questions about what? We were very careful that an interdisciplinary approach was taken by designers, psychologists, with task analysis by engineers and designers of the vehicles to question, gauge information about preferences about what would be onboarding, what a kind of request badge, or to find the vehicle. So asking preferences for how to manage the reservation, for instance, where to return the vehicle, or using the vehicle, what kind of fuel batteries or information about the access for the infotainment, and other features that might be very interesting to address needs and wants by the users. So stay on a simple side. Remember, there is a public on website, on the project website, deliverable is deliverable one Steve survey that is quite complex enough to go through that very large document about this analysis. But the kind of key question we're just trying to define how familiar at this stage, 2019 and 20, the majority population of those 4,000 responses were about car bike sharings, using payments for smartphone for booking the car and things like that. And the kind of how do they generally travel right now? Because this is not done in the void. We need to substantiate that the service is within the context of the present mobility services. So we were trying to track down strengths and weaknesses of the actual mobility services to understand how electrified vehicles could just move into that kind of strategy. So then we were asking what could be useful for them, or the typical commuting trip, or the kind of average range of kilometers done on a daily basis per residents versus commuters versus tourists. and what kind of, very important, kind of rewards they would prefer to have on their hands when they have to plan a trip entering into Torino, and one day maybe Milano, or one day maybe Berlin. I don't know. It's just a research project now, but this type of rewards will just project the interests from the user point of view. The key game was to apply very sophisticated techniques then to identify, let's call it simply, an identikit of the European Steve user, the European user more interested in having the options offered to him from a technical engineering point of view. And to be simple, we identified by machine learning, a kind of advanced statistics, a kind of profile, a pattern, a profile of different people, not to marketing purposes at this stage, we will see that, but to make clear ourselves that a certain type of, if it's coming from Turin, it is resident, it is young, it is a male, it has a kind of a gross income per year, for instance, is just as far as home, is located less than 3 kilometers from the place of work or study. This 0.85 is the risk, not the risk, the probability of being highly a subject highly interested early adopter of the Steve service. To simplify, a high potential user with a high very probability to be a high potential user has been profiled with structures like this. And how these things are important is the fact that can be used as methods to generalize through the various cities within the project. We'll see how. Some other results. Those one were predictive results. These are examples. For instance, the key type of reward independently by the place is a free ride after 10 rides made. So using the service, the Steve vehicle, and then just getting something out of 10 rides more. And male, for instance, are more hesitant to share their information about mobility information. Or there was, for shopping, there was an interest and a need to heavy equipment. So let's be careful on redesigning or reshaping the structure of the vehicles according to this kind of information. Or for travelers, clearly public transport at destination is one of the most preferred aspects. Or for instance, the most preferred modality was booking with a smartphone application, according to the users. And these kind of descriptive profiles in this case were just telling us that Calvia is different in terms of needs from Torino as well as from Villeks. And that was the unique selling point from our point of view for the municipalities. So in the end, from this evaluation of the user aspects, we really have a kind of market strategy to be informed. We can inform even more the policy and recommendations for sustainable immobility. For instance, and I'm going to conclude this presentation, based on citizen preferences, we can shape the future of the immobility within a city, not just for market drive, but maybe targeting the early adopters for specific parts of the city. The municipality may be only targeting the laggards, the people that are more reluctant, if you like, to use new kind of services, and reducing costs of campaigns, advertising campaigns to the wrong target. This will allow to anticipate our user analysis, the most likely transport risks in terms of preferences on comobility and co-sharing. If you think about the cost for a municipality about the fleet maintenance, imagine Steve cars all over the place in Torino or in village, how do we imagine the costs referring to the most likely percentage of people that might be really using the service, the early adopters, with respect to removing a portion of the potential market about the laggards, the reluctant people to use the services. So in the end, for a municipality, even the user-centric approach will just allows cost reduction in the most likely transport service combination to go, because one of the needs and the profiles will just reveal that they prefer to use the bus station combined with this car, the Steve car, but not the the metro. So this kind of combined results about the user-centric approach will inform not only marketing, but more rational, more informed decision-making at policy level on what would be the future of the e-mobility services within the cities. And with this, I thank you for your listening.
And so we can start to go through the second session and user-centric e-design for innovative technologies and services. And I would like to give the floor to Daniele Baranzini. And Daniele will show us the work the Ospedale San Raffaele did in Steve project, dealing with users and try to understand users' impressions. So please, Daniele.